The stars were quiet in Sector 14 Delta. No wars, no colonies, just rocks floating in the cold. That's why the mining ship Graskell was there. Less danger, more resources. Captain Relo didn't like quiet places, but credits were credits. For 5 cycles they had scanned and drilled into useless rocks. No valuable minerals, no hidden treasure, just more silence. Then the signal came. It was weak. Just a slow pulse repeating every hour. A small vibration in the static. Technician Breck was the first to notice it. He thought it was background noise. But after the third pulse, his fur stood up. He enhanced the signal, cleaned the static, and found something strange. The pattern was not natural. It was too perfect, too clean. It was old tech. Very old. Captain Rilo didn't want to waste time, but curiosity won. They followed the signal. The source came from a nearby dead planet, dark, airless, lifeless. It had no name, just a number. They landed, sent down scanners, and found a large object buried deep beneath the surface, nearly 12 kilometers below. Relo thought it was a crashed ship or maybe an ancient city. The readings were strange. Too big to be a ship, too smooth to be nature. They called in a science vessel from the Coalition. Within hours, more ships arrived. They set up base. Digging machines started cutting through rock. On the third day, they reached it. It was metal, black, thick, and cold. Not rusted, not broken. Untouched by time. Scientists scanned it. The metal wasn't in their database. It was harder than anything they had ever seen. No energy readings. No doors. No writing. Just a single blinking red light. One pulse every hour. Some called it a tomb. Others called it a relic. But one name spread fast. A human relic. Nobody had seen humans in over 1,000 years. History said they were extinct. Gone after the Great War. The story said the Coalition had wiped them out. That they were too dangerous, too wild. They burned bright and then they vanished. Now this. News traveled fast. Within a week, a warlord fleet showed up. They pushed aside the scientists and took control. They wanted to break into the object, take it apart, sell it, but their tools did nothing, not even a scratch. Then a voice spoke. It came from deep inside the metal. Cold, clear, human. System integrity at 98%. Threat level detected. Preparing to rise. Panic spread across the base. Ships powered up weapons. Alarms screamed. But before anyone could fire, the ground began to move. The planet shook. Dust rose into the sky. Rocks exploded. The buried metal slowly rose from the earth, revealing its true shape. It was no relic. It was a ship. A monster of a ship. 2 kilometers. Wide, glowing red along its sides. Thousands of weapon ports. Engines the size of cities. It floated up with perfect control, no sound, no flames, just quiet power. The scanners finally gave it a name. Designation. Supercarrier Vengeance. A human warship, long forgotten. Buried. Sleeping. Now awake. The alien ships hovered around it, unsure. Some tried to talk, others locked weapons. A few backed away. Captain Rilo watched from his bridge, eyes wide, hands shaking. He had read stories of human supercarriers, ships that could destroy planets, weapons that could blind stars. But those were stories. This was real. Inside the Vengeance, an ancient AI rechecked its systems. Engines stable, weapons charged, enemy fleet detected. Human life signs 0, mission undefined, survival protocol active. The voice came again. Supercarrier Vengeance online. Hostile signatures detected. Engaging. Then it fired. A single beam of white light shot from the ship's front cannon. It hit the nearest alien cruiser. There was no explosion, no fire, just sudden silence. The ship vanished. Disintegrated. The rest of the fleet panicked. Some tried to run. Others fired. Missiles. The Vengeance responded faster. Lasers sliced through space like blades. Missiles from the alien ships exploded before reaching the target. The Vengeance moved like a ghost. Too fast. Too smart. In less than a minute, 10 ships were gone. Relos. Ship barely escaped, spinning away with damaged engines. He looked back once. The Vengeance floated alone, unharmed, surrounded by debris. Across the galaxy, the signal spread. Old human codes were reactivated. Deep listening posts picked up the noise. Hidden satellites responded. Ancient warnings blinked red after 1,000 years of silence. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Many laughed at first. A ghost ship? A myth? Then the battle footage came. Every leader watched as a single human ship wiped out an entire fleet. Quiet filled the room. The oldest among them whispered a name the galaxy had long forgotten. Vengeance. Panic followed. Some called it a malfunctioning AI. Others believed it was a trap, but a few feared the worst. If one ship had survived, were there more? Did humanity really die, or had they gone into hiding, planning their return? The Vengeance began to move. It turned from the dead planet and entered hyperspace, following coordinates from its last known mission. No one knew where it was going, but everyone knew one thing. They had made a mistake. They thought the war was over. They thought humans were extinct. They were wrong. Somewhere far away, deep in a forgotten asteroid field, a silent base flickered to life. Screens lit up. Codes unlocked. Inside, something old and powerful began to move. A voice whispered, "Signal received. Project Rebirth. Initiated." And so it began. The return of humanity. And the galaxy was not ready. The stars above the mining zone were still littered with glowing wreckage. Pieces of broken alien ships drifted through space like forgotten trash. No one dared go near them. The fear was too fresh. Every ship that had tried to approach the area again had turned back. The memory of what happened to the alien fleet was still clear. A single ship had caused it all. A ship not seen for 1,000 years. A human supercarrier, awake again after centuries of silence. The ship did not speak again. It didn't answer calls. It didn't explain its actions. It simply vanished into hyperspace, moving toward unknown coordinates with a smooth, steady course. Many believed it had no pilot, only a machine mind controlling it. But some began to wonder if something more was inside. Something old. Something waiting. Across the galaxy, fear started to grow. On a well-guarded council world, leaders from different species gathered in emergency chambers. They played the same video over and over. The flash of light, the ships disappearing, the perfect targeting. The ship's name glowing red on its hull. They argued, shouted, panicked. No one could understand how such a thing was possible. The record said humans had lost. The galaxy believed they were gone, destroyed by a secret weapon. But now, that story was breaking apart. The question now was simple. Where is the ship going? A special tracking team was sent after the signal trail. They stayed hidden, using stealth tech, avoiding detection. The trail led them to a cold, empty system where no stars shined bright. No planets had life. There, at the edge of the darkness, they found it. The human ship, floating near a large asteroid. But something else was there too. Another signal. Faint, buried under rock and dust. It matched old human tech frequencies. The alien team stayed at a distance and watched. They saw lights turn on beneath the asteroid's surface. Then doors opened. Massive hangar doors hidden for centuries slid open like a mouth waking from sleep. Machines moved inside. Drones flew out and started repairing the human ship. It hadn't come alone. It had returned home. And that meant there were more places like this. More secrets, more weapons, and maybe more humans. The watching ship sent out a warning, but it never finished the message. A soft pulse hit it. Not an explosion, not an attack, just a signal. And then the ship went dark. Its systems failed. Lights blinked out. The crew sat frozen, unsure what to do. Then from their window, they saw the human ship turn toward them. It didn't fire. It simply scanned the alien ship for a long moment, then turned away again. as if it had decided they weren't worth the energy. That silence was more powerful than any threat. The alien crew waited for hours before their ship restarted. When they returned, they were changed. They no longer believed this was just an old machine. They believed it was something more. Something aware. Back on the Council world, fear turned into action. A fleet was formed, larger than any in recent history. Hundreds of ships, the strongest from every species. The mission was simple: intercept the human ship and stop it from reaching any more human locations. They didn't want answers anymore. They wanted to end the fear. The fleet left quickly, chasing the human trail. But the human ship was always ahead. It jumped from one dead system to another, waking up hidden bases, activating old satellites, collecting something from each. Memories, maps, pieces of the past. It was rebuilding a path, and every stop made it stronger. In a forgotten corner of the galaxy, another base lit up. Inside, deep in the cold walls, a chamber opened. Inside were cryopods, tubes holding bodies in frozen sleep. The system scanned, each one. Then lights turned green. One of the pods hissed. A man slowly opened his eyes. He gasped for breath, blinking in the dim light. His uniform still held the faded symbols of the human fleet. The last thing he remembered was the final battle. The collapse, the order to disappear, and now, after 1,000 years, the signal had reached him. He stood up. He was not young. His body was stiff, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at the screen and saw the same ship that had once led his fleet, the Supercarrier, awake again. He whispered to himself, "So, it's time." The galaxy was moving toward a moment it could not stop. The humans were waking up, piece by piece. Their machines were finding each other. Their hidden codes were spreading again. The vengeance was not just a ship. It was a call, a reminder, a sign that the past had not been erased. And the new fleet. It was coming fast, full of weapons and leaders who wanted to end the threat before it grew. But they didn't understand what they were walking into. They didn't know the old war had never truly ended, only paused, hidden under time. The Supercarrier moved silently through the stars. It had no need for speeches, no need for warnings. It was not here for revenge. It was here to finish what had started, and the galaxy could feel it, not with noise, but with silence. The kind that comes before something changes forever. The stars seemed calmer in that part of the galaxy, but only on the surface. Beneath the quiet sky, the air was heavy with waiting. Ships across different systems had started changing their routes. Trading fleets shifted paths. Civilian colonies stopped broadcasting their locations. There was no official announcement, but the fear spread like smoke. Something had returned. Something that once shook the stars, and no one knew what it wanted. Out in the void, the human ship continued its journey. It moved with purpose, but without sound. No hails were answered. No lights blinked in pattern, but at every destination something ancient came alive. Forgotten stations powered up. Long-lost satellites blinked red as if recognizing an old friend. The Supercarrier was not searching anymore. It was remembering. In a deep-sea vault on a water world, a black cube lit up after being dark for over 1,000 years. It scanned its surroundings and then began sending codes through the ocean to a buried structure. Slowly, giant machines started moving beneath the waves, untouched by rust or time. On the surface, a research team monitoring tidal patterns saw strange activity. But when they tried to scan, their system shut down. The power returned only after the structure below had completed its task, transmitting something into the sky. Short time later, the human ship passed overhead. It didn't stop, it didn't slow down, but it had heard the signal. And now it carried something new. Back on the Council world, things were no longer calm. After the massive fleet had been sent out, the remaining leaders stayed behind in uneasy silence. Reports came in slowly. Most scouts never returned. The few who did came back speaking carefully, watching their words. There was no damage on their ships, no missing parts. But there was something in their eyes, a deep, quiet realization that the thing they were chasing was beyond them. One such scout, a veteran of many patrols, stood before the council and simply said, "We are not prepared." When pressed for answers, he could only describe the feeling, the way the ship moved, the way it ignored them. Not like prey, not like an enemy, but something distant, unreachable, like trying to grab a shadow that never stood still. Meanwhile, on a frozen moon, a group of ancient vaults began to hum. Inside them were sealed containers, marked in a language long thought dead. Human language. One by one, the containers unlocked. Inside were memory cores, data, recordings, maps, even songs. They uploaded into the air, traveling like invisible waves until they reached the stars. The supercarrier turned again, its path now bent toward an uncharted system, a quiet place with no known value. But long ago it had been the final rally point for the last human defense line, a place chosen to be forgotten. And now, it was remembered. The fleet sent to stop the ship had finally caught up, at least in location. They had no visuals, but their long-range sensors picked up the human vessel's trail. The admirals argued over what to do next. Some wanted to confront it. Others feared even getting close. They didn't know how to fight something they couldn't understand. A smaller group of scientists aboard the lead ship tried a different idea. They studied the old human signals, looking for meaning. Hidden inside the broadcasts, they found repeating sequences, codes meant for someone who knew how to read them. After days of work, one message became clear. "We remember. Do you?" The message wasn't a threat. It was a test. Back in deep space, within the supercarrier, systems continued to activate. In a quiet chamber at the heart of the ship, a single chair sat under a dome of stars. It had remained empty for 1,000 years. Until now. Slowly, the lights began to glow around it, and soft energy filled the air. The man who had awakened earlier, the last survivor, stepped into the chamber. He said nothing as he sat down. The ship responded instantly. Panels opened, screens came alive. The stars outside the dome aligned into maps. The past connected with the present. The voice of the ship greeted him. Command restored. Orders? He looked at the map and saw the massive alien fleet closing in. Not far now. But he didn't give a command to fight. He didn't need to. The ship knew what to do. It had not survived all this time to argue or doubt. Instead, he simply said, "Let them see." The ship's outer surface changed. Panels shifted, revealing lines of data. Old history, human images, even sound. A story played out across space, visible to any ship nearby. A history of sacrifice, of loss, of the final day when humans chose to hide instead of destroy. It was a message not of war but of memory. The approaching fleet stopped. Their ships floated in silence, receiving the broadcast. There were no attacks, no commands. Just silence and stories from a time they had been told to forget. Among the fleet's crew, something shifted. Officers lowered their voices. Weapons were powered down, and deep in their minds, questions began to bloom. What if the humans hadn't been defeated? What if they had chosen peace by disappearing? And what would it mean now that they had returned? The human ship didn't move to attack. It simply waited. And that waiting became louder than any weapon. Darkness folded gently around, the edge of the forgotten system. A cool, silent stillness stretched across the void, broken only by the soft flicker of ancient beacons waking up, one by one. There were no colonies here, no stations, not even a moon worth mining, just a ring of quiet rocks orbiting a dying star. And yet, the human supercarrier had arrived. It hovered like a ghost at the edge of the system, unmoving, surrounded by the echoes of time. Inside the ship, the air felt heavier. Systems long buried under layers of dust and memory were now fully active. The old crew member, the last to awaken from the cryopod, moved through the glowing halls with a purpose that had been frozen for 1,000 years. He wasn't just following orders. He was following history. In the heart of the ship, He entered a chamber covered in panels of soft blue light. On the walls were names, thousands of them. Every name represented someone who had vanished with the fall of humanity. They weren't just lost soldiers. They were engineers, farmers, scientists, and children. The ship had not forgotten them, and now it wanted the galaxy to remember too. Meanwhile, out in space, the fleet that had once raced to intercept the carrier had slowed. They had watched the silent message the human ship displayed. Images, voices, memories. Now they waited, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Inside the lead ship, the admirals met in hushed tones. They had no idea what the supercarrier's next move would be. Every prediction failed. Every scan gave them nothing but silence. And yet, the fear had softened, not disappeared, but changed. It was no longer the fear of danger. It had become the fear of misunderstanding something far greater than themselves. From that same fleet, a curious move was made. A small diplomatic ship was launched. Not armed, not shielded. It moved slowly toward the human supercarrier with a clear message beam. "We don't want conflict. We want to understand." There was no reply. Not at first, but when the diplomatic vessel drew close, something unexpected happened. The human ship released a signal, not a warning, not a broadcast, but a set of coordinates. The aliens on the small ship stared at the strange numbers, confused. They thought it might be a trap. But after analysis, the truth became clear. The coordinates pointed to a world long erased from modern maps. A human world. Long ago, it had been struck by planetary collapse after a deep space battle. Everyone believed it had been destroyed, its remains lost in time. But now the supercarrier was pointing back to it as if to say, "This is where it began. And this is where you must go to understand." The small ship relayed the coordinates to the fleet. Debates broke out again. Some said it was a diversion, a trick. Others saw it differently, an invitation. In the end, a scouting group was sent to the location, careful, quiet, hoping to find answers. What they found was something far more powerful than ruins. The planet still turned. Yes, its surface was shattered and dry, but hidden beneath layers of stone and forgotten metal, there were lights, systems, vaults, and inside those vaults were memories. The scouting team found rooms filled with recorded history, holograms, voice, logs, even physical books. They found journals written by the last human scientists, trying to preserve their story. They discovered messages left behind, addressed not to humans, but to anyone who found them in the future. "We are not gone. We are only waiting, and when the time comes, we will remember who we are." Back on the supercarrier, the lone crew member watched the incoming data. He didn't need to decode it. He knew it by heart. He had helped build those vaults, helped write those messages. And now, finally, someone was listening. But the ship's work was not finished. Across the galaxy, more systems began to respond. The ship had been leaving a trail of waking tech behind it, activating hidden relays, old satellites, and encrypted signals. As each system lit up, the shape of something larger began to appear. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a network, a map. A reminder of the civilization that once stretched across the stars, now flickering back to life one spark at a time. The alien fleet, still following the carrier, received the data too. They couldn't stop it. It streamed directly into their archives. Some tried to block it, afraid of what might come next. But others started reading, watching, learning. They saw humans not as conquerors, but as survivors. As builders. As people who had chosen to vanish rather than destroy others. And slowly, doubts began to grow. Maybe this wasn't the rise of a threat. Maybe it was the return of something the galaxy needed to remember. But not everyone believed. That far beyond the Council's reach, in corners of the galaxy that preferred control over truth, a darker alliance began to form. These groups had benefited from humanity's disappearance. They had rewritten history in their favor. They couldn't allow this story to spread. They couldn't let the stars remember. And so they started preparing, not with understanding, but with fear. The human supercarrier, still silent, still steady, began its next journey, to the heart of the old human alliance. A system hidden for so long, it had become myth. But now, it was calling. The lights on the ship pulsed in rhythm with something deeper, something older. The lone human on board stood once more at the ship's command center. The stars around him shifted into shape. He watched them, silent. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. But his presence told the universe, we are here, and we have always been. And as the ship prepared to move again, something across the galaxy changed, unseen, quiet, but real. A moment that marked the beginning of something no one could stop, a memory returning home. The stars seemed to hold their breath as the supercarrier drifted closer to the hidden system, a place shrouded in silence for centuries. The emptiness around it was not peaceful. It was expectant, like the calm before a great wave breaks. Every light on the ship flickered softly, as if awakening from a long sleep, and the ship's systems hummed with quiet power, ready for the next phase of their mission. Inside, the last awakened human moved through the dim corridors with steady steps. His eyes carried the weight of history, and his heart beat with the memory of a time when humans ruled these stars, not with force, but with discovery. He did not know what he would find in the hidden system, but he understood that what lay ahead would change everything. When the ship entered orbit, ancient sensors awoke beneath the planet's surface. Long-buried machines began to stir. Vaults cracked open, revealing chambers filled with relics and data untouched by time. The scouting teams, sent ahead by the alien fleet, observed in disbelief. This was no abandoned ruin. It was a treasure. Trove of knowledge, a testament to a civilization that had vanished but never truly disappeared. As explorers delved into the depths, holographic images sparked to life, showing bustling cities, grand ships, and peaceful worlds. Stories of human achievements, alliances forged, and sacrifices made unfolded before their eyes. The archives revealed secrets of technology once thought impossible, and wisdom lost to the ages. But what truly caught the attention of the alien scientists were the records of humanity's decision to withdraw from the galaxy. It was not defeat, but choice, a deliberate act to protect others and themselves. They had hidden away, waiting for the right moment to return, not as conquerors, but as guardians of peace. The fleet commanders listened closely. The supercarrier's message had become clear. Humans had not forgotten the galaxy. They had been preparing in silence, gathering strength, and now they were ready to rejoin the cosmic community. Yet, the path forward was uncertain. Some factions within the alien fleets hesitated. Memories of past conflicts, fears of the unknown, and mistrust lingered. Could humanity be trusted again? Or was this a new challenge, one that would test the fragile balance of power? As the question spread, the supercarrier began transmitting more than just history. It broadcasted messages of hope and unity, invitations to dialogue and cooperation. The ship extended an offer to share knowledge, to rebuild connections, and to face future challenges together. In response, representatives from various species cautiously approached. Diplomatic talks started in orbit, with the supercarrier serving as a neutral ground. The last human on board acted as a bridge, sharing stories and listening to fears. Slowly, walls of suspicion began to crumble, replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. Meanwhile, deep within the shadows, those who feared change plotted. They whispered of threats and hidden dangers, spreading doubt and hesitation. But their voices were growing weaker, drowned out by the growing chorus of those who believed in a new era, an era where the past's lessons could guide the future. The supercarrier continued its mission, journeying to distant worlds once connected by human influence. Each stop rekindled old alliances and forged new bonds. Systems once isolated now communicated, united by a shared hope. Through it all, the last human remained vigilant, aware that trust must be earned and that the galaxy's future depended on the choices made today. His presence was a reminder that Even in the vastness of space, history's echoes could inspire change. As stars shimmered around the ship, it became clear that the human supercarrier was more than a vessel. It was a symbol, a beacon of resilience, remembrance, and renewal. And in that beacon's light, the galaxy found a new beginning. The silence of space stretched endlessly as the human supercarrier made its final approach toward the heart of the ancient Alliance system. This place was once the center of human power, where countless stars had been connected by trade, friendship, and shared knowledge. Now, it lay mostly dark, a shadow of its former self, waiting for the spark to light it again. Inside the ship, the last awakened human stood quietly in the command room. His gaze was steady, eyes reflecting the distant stars. He felt the weight of generations on his shoulders, the hopes of a people who had hidden themselves away for 1,000 years. Now the time had come to remind the galaxy who humanity truly was. The supercarrier's systems hummed to life, broadcasting messages of peace and unity across the system. The ancient stations and outposts responded, blinking back to life like old friends waking from a long sleep. A network of communication sparked across the planets, reconnecting worlds that had forgotten each other. Outside, ships from various species gathered cautiously, drawn by the ship's signals. Some came with questions, others with skepticism. Yet all were curious. The galaxy had waited long for answers. The supercarrier offered those answers, not in weapons or threats, but in history, culture, and hope. At the same time, the last human on board sent out messages, reaching not just governments, but the people of the stars. Stories of human kindness, innovation, and sacrifice spread through the networks, reminding everyone that humanity's absence had left a void, not a wound. The galaxy began to see humans not as distant ghosts, but as potential partners. Still, challenges remained. Some factions held onto old fears, unwilling to trust the return of a species once thought lost. Old rivalries and misunderstandings threatened to rise again. But the supercarrier stood firm, a symbol of endurance and a promise that the future could be different. As the Alliance's leaders met in the ancient halls, talks began in earnest. Plans for cooperation, shared exploration, and joint defense were laid out. The galaxy glimpsed a new era, one where past mistakes might guide wiser choices. Through it all, the last human watched quietly. He understood that trust was fragile and would take time to build, but he believed in the power of stories and memories to heal. With each new alliance formed, with each friendship rekindled, humanity's place in the stars grew stronger. The supercarrier, once buried and forgotten, now shone like a beacon. It was a reminder that no matter how long the darkness, light could return. That even after 1,000 years, a people could rise again, not to conquer, but to connect. And as the stars glittered around them, the galaxy held its breath, ready to step into a future shaped by the courage to remember and the hope to rebuild.